It's something that nowadays, to my understanding, my limited understanding, wallahu a'lam, is one of the key problems that we have as to why the principles of the deen is in decline. What do I mean by that? What I mean by, my dear brothers and sisters, is the Prophet ﷺ, when he was teaching, in the attendance always used to be youth. Many examples of that. Mufassir this religion is Abdullah ibn Abbas, radiallahu anhu. Someone who was very small, at a small age, with the Prophet ﷺ, who learned and got the dua from the Rasul ﷺ. Someone who became advisor to Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, joined his council at an early age. And there are many examples of that. Two examples that I want to share with you today, because both of them underscores the principles that you and I learn, and we are supposed to be applying as far as this deen is concerned, and we learned it through the channels of the youth. Just two examples. One comes from Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu. One day he's sitting among the Sahaba, and the Prophet ﷺ is always the master teacher, always has some nuggets of hikmah to share with people. Core principles are taught in a very easy way. He raises the question, everybody's wondering, he gives the answer. In a very short, concise way. Everybody now has the true meaning to apply on themselves. So one day he asked the Sahaba, as we are all aware of, says, if you were to describe a mu'min as one of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation, plants, trees, and other plants, how would you describe? And then all the Sahaba are taking shot at it. Everybody's saying one tree or another. And the Prophet ﷺ is listening to them. One day exhausted all the answers, and none of them got it right, and then the Prophet ﷺ explains to them what he had in mind. He said what he had in mind was the mu'min is best described by the palm tree that bears the fruits of dates. Date palms. That's what describes the mu'min very well. And he gives a couple of reasons as to why. The fact that it's all year long green, the fact that the leaves of it don't fall and hit the ground, as the other trees, when the seasons change, we're aware of what happens, and so forth and so on. Again, he's given the principles. And what are the principles? What do I mean by principles? What I mean is he gives the key to open other knowledge for us. Like right now, the examples that he gave as to why that palm tree is beneficial is very limited, the Prophet ﷺ, because he's not there to give you volumes of information to take. He's supposed to give us little information that will inspire us to do more research. So if you and I go on Google and look up the benefit of that tree, then we will understand what it means. Now we have huge volumes and volumes of information as to the benefit. It bears fruit that does not go rotten. You can travel with it. The distance. It restores the water that you lost, the hydration. When you become dehydrated, you're eating that little date. It restores the potassium that you lost and everything else. The palm tree bears palms, right? Palms are made out of roofs, made out of mattresses, made out of baskets, made out of a million other things that you and I cannot even count, sadly. All of that benefit. And it grows in a desert. What does that indicate? Well, it needs very little water. So the mu'min does not need a lot of resources. Does not need to suck things from the community. Because many of those huge trees, what do? They take the water from the other smaller plants to survive naturally. This one doesn't. SubhanAllah, it gives, it does not take much. It gives a lot more than it takes. So that's why the Prophet ﷺ describes that moment as such. And who conveys that information to us? This young man who's sitting among the Sahaba, who later on after the event follows his father and he tells to his father, Wallahi, I knew the answer. I just was too shy a little bit because everybody is sitting there and who is who of the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ are sitting there. And if they didn't get the answers right, I was too ashamed as a young man to raise my hand and say, I think it's the date palm. So he was respectful of his elders in that sense. And again, we learn different lessons from that. But look at the knowledge, the depth of understanding from this young man who's sitting among the biggest Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not give the hikmah or knowledge of that sort on age-based, or ethnicity-based, or richness-based, wealth-based. He does not. Allah does not do that. Allah gives to whomever He wishes. And in this case, then, if we are excluding our young, then what happens? Others get a hold of them and give them some superficial information that don't have anything and sound certain things without really giving them any context. So they control them to smear the name of Islam even further, to do the unthinkable, to create more problems for the others and so forth and so on. But these young men understood what the Prophet ﷺ was talking. They understood these core principles that guides you and I. What the Deen teaches us is not just ritual. Ritual is part of the worship, don't get me wrong. But we have to understand what it means. We have to understand what it means. Otherwise, we miss the point. Nowadays, we have people who are going to be in the front line praying together, shoulder to shoulder, toe to toe, who would not even say salam to one another. So what was the purpose of shoulder to shoulder, toe to toe then? If it does not mean the unity and to care for one another and to afterwards to greet one another and to find out about the condition, the health condition of that person, the wealth condition of that, financial condition of that person, and so forth and so on. They might need help and they might not say that. So we miss all the point there. If the focus is the ritual. If the focus is the ritual, then we miss the point. The second example. The second example is even more interesting. It takes place in Medina between the Prophet ﷺ, the master teacher, and a young man, 19-year-old, by the name Mu'adh bin Jabal, radiallahu anhu. One of the younger Sahaba among the Prophet ﷺ, who sat in his court and learned from him and so forth and so on. But he sees something special in that young man, and he wants to give him the assignment that many of the elder ones, many of more experienced companions of the Prophet ﷺ wish to have gotten. He sends him as a governor to Yemen to govern a state that's more sophisticated than what they had in Medina as far as the structure is concerned, as far as system is concerned, as far as governance is concerned, and all of these. So the Prophet ﷺ calls this young man and engages him in discourse, conversation. One of the most fascinating conversations that teaches humanity, and that's why we're talking about it this very day, and the generations after us will keep talking about it. So he says, oh young man, I'm sending you with this responsibility. You're going to go to people that are more sophisticated than us. How are you going to govern them? How are you going to govern them? And then Mu'adh radiallahu anhu answers and says, I will govern them by the book of Allah. are the Quran, what I learned from the Book of Allah. So Rasulullah alayhi salatu salam does not stop there. And this is the lesson that we oftentimes